You have me, Brent Simpson, along with the co-founder of Investing in Education Academy, Leon Noble. Today, some of you might know the topic we're about to talk about. Some of you might not know anything about the topic that we're about to talk about. Some of you all may be intimately familiar with the topic we're about to talk about. Some of you all may be highly against the topic we're about to talk about. Why just play that game is I thought it'd be fun. But really, we're going to talk about a topic that's going to affect a lot of people on the legal side, on the recreational side, and just as a consumer in general. You might now have a hint of what we're going to talk about. But Leon, you can give them the topic while I do a little bit of housekeeping.
Yeah, so the topic today is, as Brent said, some people may be familiar with it, some people may not. Some people may actually, in some ways, take offense, but it kind of is what it is. So we're going to discuss it today, cannabis or marijuana, the industry in general. And the reason being is because a very, very big announcement was made. I don't know if it was yesterday or last week, but the report about this actually came out August of last year. I don't know why it just now hit the news, but we're a stock show investing, so we're focusing on stocks. So just a bit of a background. So marijuana, most marijuana stocks or companies came public.
And Leon, you sound a little far away now.
Oh, I'll come a little closer.
Yep, there you go.
All right. So a lot of marijuana companies and stocks came public in 2001, and there was a huge amount of hype around it for obvious reasons. I mean, we all know the sales of things like cigarettes and things like alcohol. Yep. So it was a time to get in on the bottom floor of a lot of people's vice, which is marijuana, and sales. So some of the things I saw in the illicit market about the sales. I mean, the sales were in the billions of dollars. The illicit market. Now, how accurate that is, we don't really know because it's illicit. It's illegal, but it's roughly in the tens. I believe it was tens of billions of dollars in revenue in the illicit market. So coming to the quasi-legal market, there's a huge amount of hype. A lot of companies came public. A lot of those companies shot up. The stock shot up when they first came out, but they've since crashed and absolutely burned.
Real quick, some of you all, when marijuana first hit and you were able to invest in the market, there was no historical data to support how these companies would do, but a lot of people just assumed all companies in the space would do well, and that's not an accurate assumption. And because of that, this is where sometimes when Leon and I are talking about looking at the fundamentals of a company, you also want to look at the financials. Many of these companies were not profitable, and the laws around how they manage their money were loose at best. And so when you're looking at what's called a speculative market, you really have to go further than just saying it seems like a good idea, or, well, I know a lot of people talk about it, so let me jump in, or even I use it so everybody else might use it, because where you buy it from, how it's grown, how it's dispersed, distribution, all these things matter, the profitability of a company. So again, people hear the message we're talking about today, but don't just assume any stock in this space is going to be, viable.
Yeah,
you really have to look at the business infrastructure of the companies.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of hype around, and in some ways there still is. There's a lot of hype around marijuana stocks. People thinking that they're going to go to the moon because there's going to be so much demand for them. Well, there was a lot of demand for the stocks, and there's always demand for the product, but there was a lot of demand for the stocks. But what happened was, once the hype kind of died down, people realized, okay, this thing is actually still illegal. Some states don't allow it. A lot of people are still against it generally. And as Brent said, their fundamentals were terrible. Like, they weren't profitable. Some of them were barely generating revenue. For anybody that knows, back in 2001, the big thing then were these atypical IPOs called SPACs. And they're big. That just basically, it's just a term that means
special purpose acquisition company.
Right, and companies were able to come public without really disclosing a lot about their financials or lack of financials. It's kind of a clouded way to come public, and a lot of companies jumped on it. And a lot of these marijuana companies did too. And then once it came public and people kind of dug into their financials, people realized, okay, these are kind of house of cards right now, very, very early, very, very speculative. And then, of course, 2002 hit, where the market went to the tank and everything, got hit. But marijuana stocks got hit particularly hard. Most of them are down still to this day, down about anywhere from 80 to 95%. They've been absolutely wiped out. But So now that's kind of the history behind it. Now, what's happened recently is the federal government, which still considers marijuana to be illegal, they're not legalized. So in my mind, what I'm about to say is kind of quasi legalization by the federal government. So a lot of states, I think it's like 20, 30 states, marijuana is legal, but the federal government, it's not. So one thing they begin pressure from the states and individuals saying, hey, why are you still classifying marijuana as illegal when almost half the states in the country say it's legal? So what they did recently is they've downgraded the drug marijuana. So it was a stage 1 drug, which means it was on the same level of like heroin, which is one of the deadliest drugs out there, to a stage 3 drug now, which is on the level of it was like ketamine, testosterone, and Tylenol with codeine. So it's now deemed relatively safe by the federal government. And I mean, if it's classified like that, the federal government isn't looking at it as an illegal drug, even though it technically still isn't legal. It's no longer looked at as an illicit, deadly drug that you can possibly be thrown in jail, thrown in jail for. So this is huge news, right? So what this means is now one thing that this didn't solve was the banking issue. So marijuana companies still, I don't believe, can actually access banks because that's a federal charter and it's still not federally legal. But what they did, again, they downgraded the drug from being a stage 1 to a stage 3, which again is on par with like ketamine and Tylenol. But it's still not legal. But what's great for the industry and the stocks is that this is going to open up the market now to a bunch more retailers, a bunch more individuals. Because before the fear was if you're caught with marijuana in a state where it's not quote unquote legal, there can be legal issues, right? But now, even if you go to a state where it's maybe it's still illegal, or maybe it's for medical use, the federal government now sees it as just a drug on par with Tylenol, with codeine or ketamine. So that
real quick, just because I know a lot of the people that watch this and listen to our podcast are in Maryland. It was July the 1st, 2023, I believe, legislation hit Maryland, essentially saying that individuals, number one, they stopped calling it marijuana, and now it's referred to as cannabis for legal purposes. And in addition to that, individuals as of July 1st, 2023, individuals 21 and older have the ability in Maryland. This is for Maryland, not every state, to grow, use, and possess a certain amount of grams of marijuana. So, I don't know the exact gram disallowed, but just that legislation alone starts to give you an understanding of where, the country's probably going to go as it relates to cannabis.
Yep. And so, like Brent said, Maryland essentially legalized it or gave it recreational use in the state of Maryland. Like I said, 25 other states have that same law on the state level. Now, on the federal level, the federal government now has said, hey, they haven't legalized it. Again, they haven't legalized it, but they've downgraded it. So again, if you're caught with it, I'm not a lawyer, not out here giving advice, but there's a level of more comfort now with being able to access the drug, because the federal government no longer looks at it as an illicit, illegal drug. They look at it as a stage 3 drug. Again, Tylenol, ketamine, it's on those levels. Now, what that means for the stocks is, so when this news came out, I think it hit the news yesterday, because a lot of the stocks are up anywhere from 5 to almost 10%. Now, as I said, the stocks are down. I mean, they've been decimated. They're down 80+% over the last 2 or 3 years. But the reason we're bringing this up is because, as Brent said, we kind of know where this is going. Eventually it's going to lead to federal legalization. And now that the federal government has taken the first step of downgrading the drug, the next step, people think, will be legalization. Who knows? If next year, 3 years, 5 years, we don't know. But we do see that it's coming. And the thought is that if Biden wins the election this year, we'll likely see legalization faster than if it was Trump. So this is all good news for the stocks. Now, like I said, the stocks are in the tank. Some of the company's fundamentals still aren't great. Some of them, I mean, there are some stocks out there in this space that are doing well as far as revenue and have good fundamentals and some profits. But largely, it's still a young, burgeoning industry. But the reason we're bringing this up is because that ruling by the federal government recently is setting the stage for that legalization. Now, with a stock that's down 80%, you're getting it dirt cheap relative to what the potential future revenues and profits could be. So Brent and I are looking at it as and saying, look, from our perspective, it's an industry that's been decimated. It's been left for dead. Got some great news by the federal government. Again, if Biden wins, probably even better news for it. But if he doesn't, we still think legalization is coming. So, industry that's down 80+%, if you throw 1 to 3% of your portfolio at it, let it ride for the next couple of years and see what happens. If it goes to zero, there's really no skin off your back. But if it does pop, in the next couple of years, which we're kind of feeling like it will, it could be a huge return. So we just want to bring this to everyone's attention that the federal government has downgraded the drug from stage 1 to stage 3, which puts it on the same level as Tylenol with codeine, which now is not seen as an illegal illicit drug, a drug that's not as addictive or deadly as something like heroin. So these stocks should benefit going out in the future. Now, we don't know to what extent. I mean, they may not, but we're just making the point that it's something you want to have on your radar because of that ruling by the federal government.
Yeah, and like Leon said earlier, a lot of the companies early on came public through a secondary window source, through SPACs. And these special purpose acquisition companies, the reason why it's important to bring that up is by default, when the companies registered themselves or got listed on the exchanges, they didn't go through the same scrutiny as a company traditionally going through underwriting to be listed on the exchange would go through. Why is that important? Why do you care about that? Because we don't know the exact financial health of some of these companies. And also, too, when you go through a special purpose acquisition company, by default, your stock comes out at $10 a share. So those stocks, I mean, they're well under $10 a share, many of them. But if you're looking at the charts, you may think, oh, well, it's at $2, it's at $1. It must be headed back to 10 because that's what the chart says. And any chart for most stock companies is going to be a relatively short chart. You're talking under 3 years. So that is a bit of skewed information. And I don't want you all looking at the chart going, well, if it hits 10, it's headed for the moon and beyond. Nor does it mean it's going to run back to that point. It is a false number, if you will. And it was given by default, not because it was valued at that $10 per share number. So just be aware of it. And when you read the charts, the historical data just isn't there to give an accurate account of what these companies will do. And, the reason why we're telling you that is, some of you all will go immediately and look at the chart and go, oh, I know what it's capable of. And that's just not accurate.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That SPACs, like Brent said, SPACs by default are set at $10. The market didn't set that. The SPAC infrastructure or the SPAC framework sets that $10 price. So now, some of these stocks, when it came public, some of these stocks did, balloon, go to the moon. But again, that was speculation. That was hype. That was a 2021 bubble of free money from the federal government. We all seen what's happened since then. And now these companies are valued. A lot of them are under $5. Some of them are under $1. And we're talking penny stocks. Now, we're not advocates of penny stocks at all. I typically don't even buy stocks that are under 10 to 20 bucks myself. But again, being what this industry is, I think it's worth taking a look. Again, we'll say do your own research. Your suitability has to be able to, accept the risk. But it's something to look at and we always say, when we talk about stocks, our time frame is minimum 3 years, but we're looking at 5 to 10 years really. So, if you get in on one of these cannabis stocks now, which has been deemed relatively safe by the federal government, 25 plus states have made it legal. We kind of see where it's going. It's the writing's a bit on the wall of where what's possible in the future. So again, these things are down 80-90%. Some of them may be worth taking a shot at.
Yeah, and if you're looking at it, I would pay a lot of attention to not only the company's financials, but looking at the business framework and what the company's been doing, staff, their experience in the industry. This is one of those times where I would say dive a little bit into the actual company structure and who's running it, what their experience might be running a company like this, because there's not, again, enough financial data for us to just simply say, check the 5 years return or, check X. It just doesn't exist. So just dig a little deeper, everybody, if you're looking into, the cannabis industry. And also for anybody who is like, well, I heard you all say penny stock. What is that? A penny stock normally is a stock that's trading under $1. You will have some people that define a penny stock as anything less than $5. It's not really technically correct. It's anything $1 and under, but you will hear some people say under $5, but that's not accurate. And when you do have a stock that's under a penny, it becomes very speculative because
not under a penny, under $1.
I'm sorry, under $1. Thank you. If you do have a stock that's under $1, the reason why it's extremely speculative is because the market doesn't know when it might just go away. And when it say go away, we mean become delisted. So we can go into that a lot, but just we wanted to let you know what the possibilities are on the negative side, and then let you know what the possibilities are on the positive side, which is why Leon made the statement, which I agree with. 1 to 2% of your portfolio being put to this space. This is when, if you were with us during COVID, we used to talk about different types of money, and this absolutely would be what I would consider curious money. Like, we're going back to that. Remember that those fun terms we used to throw around?
The COVID days.
Yeah. So, and the reason why this isn't even risk capital is below risk capital because there's a high chance you might make a decision that can go either way. So you shouldn't have any money in this space. For me, this is me talking. It's not IEA. I don't think you should have any money in this space that could possibly hurt you. Or if you are going to be emotionally connected to the investment, I don't think this is the market that you want to be in, or lower your dollar amount to the point where you're no longer emotionally connected. If you lose it, you lose it. If it goes to the moon and above, you're excited.
Right. Yeah, and that's why we said again, 1 or 2%, maybe even less than that. Those are just ballpark numbers we're putting out there. But from our perspective, we wouldn't go above 2% for this industry. But it's something to look at. Like I said, look up the. You just Google the FDA finding around marijuana, and you'll see the news reports about it. And the stocks popped big yesterday. It doesn't mean it's going to last, but it does show interest in this space and that ruling that another 2, 3, 5 years could be big. I mean, down 80%. Getting something at a serious discount relative to its future earnings. Not saying these companies are earning money now, but if this industry develops the way we think, they're really, really cheap to what could come in the future.
All right, so everybody, we thank you, and to throw it out there, we are amongst the final days of having a discounted insider membership for Investing Education Academy. So if you want to become a member of Investing Education Academy, this is your best time. If you go to IEAmembers.com, you can see the discount that you would get for membership during this, beginning of the year. Keep your resolution sale, if you will. We want to make sure that financial literacy is pushed as far as we can push it. We will continue to do these lives, twice a month, every other week, in most cases every other week, to make sure we're doing our part to educate our community on what's happening in the industry. Please, go to our YouTube page, subscribe, stay with us. If you have suggestions on topics you would like to see us talk about, submit them, and we will do our part. If you are interested, you can follow us on Instagram. That is a great way to get in contact with Leon or I. It's listed at Investing Education Academy on Instagram. And of course, we owe you all 2 stock picks. So we will put our stock picks for those of you all who are members. You go to IEAmembers.com, log in, and you will be able to find the stock picks that we will be posting today or no later than tomorrow.
Right.
Everybody, we thank you for being with us.
But don't forget, we owe 2 picks.
That's it. If you go to the
yes. So those are posted no later than tomorrow. Our 2 picks week. Yes.
If you guys have any questions for us, please let us know. And thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for supporting us on YouTube. Thank you for supporting us on all the streaming platforms. And feel free to become a follower on Instagram. We really want to grow this year.